Have you ever found out your own daughter got married and you weren't even invited? Imagine hearing about it from a neighbor, then getting a call days later asking you to hand over the house you built with your own hands as her wedding gift. What would you do? Stay silent to keep the peace, or finally stand up for yourself? I did both, just not in the order you'd expect. Before we dive in, let me know. What time are you listening to this, and where are you? Drop a comment below, we'd love to hear from you. It was one of those heavy afternoons when even the sea felt tired. I sat on the porch of the small house I'd built after the divorce, pretending to read, while the waves muttered in the distance. Mrs. Kemp called from the fence, holding her usual smile that came before bad news. I saw pictures of Emily's wedding. San Diego, right? You must be proud. My hand froze on the coffee mug. Her wedding. Her face changed. Oh, I thought you knew. I nodded as if I did. When she left, the house turned hollow. I scrolled through old messages from Emily, none recent, and set the phone down. Maybe it was a small ceremony. Maybe the invite got lost. I kept building excuses until they sounded foolish. That night I waited for the phone to ring. It didn't. When it finally did, 2 days later, her name lit the screen. Hey, Dad, Emily said, careful like testing cold water. The wedding was a lot. I heard a pause. Then I wanted to invite you, but Mark's parents thought it'd be awkward. You know how they are about history. That word sat like a bruise. I said I understand, and hung up before the apology came. Evening dimmed to gray. I stepped onto the porch, tracing the chipped paint along the railing. Emily had once stood there laughing at the spray, asking if I ever got lonely. I'd told her no. Maybe she'd believed it. Maybe that's why she thought I wouldn't care. The sea moved in its steady rhythm. I poured another coffee, sat by the window, the phone lying still. Awkward kept circling my mind, awkward to face her father, or awkward because I reminded them of what they wanted to forget. By midnight, the coffee was cold. The distance between us felt alive, feeding on the years I'd mistaken patience for love. Morning returned like muscle memory. I fed the dog, rinsed the mug, and opened the blinds. The sun climbed over the coast, bright, detached. It looked like any other day, yet something quiet and final had shifted. The phone buzzed, breaking the dull rhythm. Emily's name appeared. Morning, Dad. Can we talk about something important? I set the phone down, took a slow breath, and felt something crack that I didn't want to mend. Light slipped across the table. My hands were steady. Her next message arrived before I'd poured my coffee. Dad, I've been thinking. There's something I need to ask. The words looked harmless, but something tightened in my chest. I typed a simple sure. Moments later, another message appeared. Longer this time. She wanted me to sign over the beach house, said it would be a beautiful wedding gift for us. I stared at the screen. The coffee maker hissed behind me. This house is where I plan to spend the rest of my life, Emily, I wrote. It's not something I can give away. The typing dots blinked, stopped. Then came her reply. Mark says you don't really need it. It's too much for one person. I read it twice. His name sat there between us like a crack spreading through glass. I didn't argue or defend the years I'd worked to keep that house after the divorce, the savings, the sweat, the pride. I just typed, I'm keeping it, Em. End of story. She didn't answer. Days went by. The quiet began to spread, thin but sharp, like a rumor people half believed. A neighbor mentioned family trouble. Someone at the market asked if things were all right with Emily and her husband. I shrugged. People fill silence with stories. When you don't speak, they invent their own. Some called me stubborn. Others pitied me. I stopped going out. That Friday I drove into town, anyway, groceries, maybe company. At the corner cafe I used to visit, I spotted Claire Thompson near the window glasses, pushed up in her hair, scrolling through her tablet. We hadn't seen each other in years. She looked up, squinted, then smiled. "David Harlan," she said. "Didn't think you still came into town?" We talked like people reacquainting after a long pause, careful, polite. When I mentioned Emily's wedding, her smile faltered. "You weren't invited?" I shook my head. "Didn't make the list." "And now she wants the house," I said. "Calls it a gift." Claire frowned. "And you said no?" "Of course." She stirred her coffee, thinking. Sometimes silence makes people believe you've already agreed. The line stayed with me. We talked about work and retirement, but Claire's words kept looping through my mind. Driving home along the coast, the waves hit the rocks in their usual rhythm, once steady, now relentless. Each crash felt like a question I couldn't answer. Back home, the house looked changed. The framed sketches, the worn spot by the bookshelf, the faint scent of sawdust. It wasn't comfort anymore, just evidence of everything I'd fought to keep. I poured a drink, sat at the table, and went through the mail. Bills, ads, and one envelope in unfamiliar handwriting. A flyer from a real estate agency offering free consultations for property transfers. No return address. I put it aside, though it stayed in my head. That night I called no one. Claire's line wouldn't leave me. Silence makes people think you've already agreed. Maybe I'd been agreeing my whole life. With my ex-wife, with co-workers, maybe even with Emily. Around midnight, I opened the old file box from the study. Dust lifted as I pulled it out, folders labeled in my handwriting: deeds, taxes, insurance court papers. I wasn't sure what I was searching for, only that I needed to see things clearly again. Paper brushed against paper in a rhythm that steadied me. I sorted through the Stackhouse deeds, insurance forms, tax receipts, all familiar. Then a photocopy I didn't remember appeared. My signature faint and slanted differently. My name, but not my writing. I froze finger on the ink. The clock ticked behind me. The original document was missing. Unease crept up my spine. Claire had been right. Silence wasn't agreement. It was permission. I left the folder open on the table, poured another drink, and turned off the lamp. The papers lay there in the dim edges, curling slightly, waiting. By the second night, the table was buried in folders, pages overlapping like fragments of a life I'd trusted too much. I'd never been one to double-check paperwork. I believed what was filed stayed safe. Between tax forms and mortgage records, a photocopy appeared. The same tilted signature, too smooth, too confident. My name, but not mine. Another folder held one stamped only months ago. Something was wrong. I called Claire the next morning. She answered on the second ring. "What did you find?" "Not sure," I said. "Looks like someone copied my signature." "Bring them," she said. "No email, no text. Drive here." In her office, she spread the pages out and studied them in silence. The ceiling fan hummed. Then she tapped one page. "Someone pulled this from public records and altered it. They're setting up a transfer request. You mean, trying to take the house?" "That's exactly what I mean." I stared at the bland wall behind her. "They can't just do that without my signature." "They can't," she said. "But people like Mark know how to blur the lines until truth feels optional." That name landed heavy. I hadn't mentioned him. She didn't have to ask. I left with the folder under my arm, head pounding. The drive home felt longer than it was. Each flash of sunlight across the windshield brought back those crooked signatures. Once home, I checked every lock, not out of fear, but because something unseen had crossed a boundary. I'd always believed good intentions could hold people together. That belief started to crack. An hour later, Mark called. "David, Heard you've been digging through old papers, he began all casual charm. Emily got worried. I told her not to stress, I'm just helping tidy things up, by making copies of my deeds. A pause. Then a soft laugh. Nothing shady. You know how messy records get. I thought I'd help Emily organize them. She's busy these days. His tone made my jaw tighten. Don't touch my records again. I understand, he said smoothly. But you'll see we're on the same side. This house, it's part of her future too. The call ended. I ignored his next one. That evening, I sealed the important documents in a metal box I hadn't used in years, then drove to the hardware store and bought new locks. I replaced the locks one by one. The steady turn of the screwdriver steadied me. I told myself it was precaution, nothing more. Days passed quietly. I trimmed the hedge, fixed the gate, and tried to busy my hands. But my thoughts kept circling the same truth: I'd done this to myself. Years of saying it's fine, of choosing peace over confrontation. Maybe people had mistaken my restraint for surrender. That realization stung more than the forgery. Late Thursday, a car stopped near the fence. A man in a navy polo stepped out, clipboard in hand. Mr. Harlan Property Assessment, he called. Shouldn't take long. Assessment for what he checked his notes. Request from a Mr. Reed. Says you approved it. You're mistaken. He shrugged, professional, detached. If it's an error, we'll confirm with the client. He left a card wedged in the gate and drove off. That night, I wanted to call Emily to ask if she even knew what he was doing, but the thought of hearing her defend him stopped me cold. The game had begun, though no one had said it yet. The envelope was crisp and official, my name printed above a San Diego law firm's address. For a second, I thought it was routine paperwork, until I saw the names beneath the heading Mark Reed and Emily Reed. The letter was polite in tone, sharp in intent. A voluntary transfer of property rights, it read, followed by a warning about appropriate legal action. Words that smiled while cutting deep. I didn't call anyone. I folded the letter, slipped it back into the envelope, and left it on the counter. The coffee had gone cold, but I drank it anyway. The next morning, I drove to Santa Barbara and walked into Claire's office without an appointment. Her assistant gave me the cautious glance reserved for people too calm to be harmless. Claire appeared a moment later, tea in hand. When she saw the envelope, she sighed. He finally made it official, she said, scanning the pages. Then a dry smile. They're testing you. They want to see if you'll flinch. I leaned forward. What do I do? Nothing loud, she said. You'll answer through me. Quiet, lawful, precise. No reaction they can twist. Her tone was steady, her eyes unblinking. You're not imagining this, David. They want you to doubt yourself. I thanked her and left the letter behind. Outside, the street buzzed with weekday purpose, a rhythm I no longer shared. By evening, the town already knew. Whispers travel fast in Santa Barbara. When I stopped for groceries, two men near the counter went silent mid-conversation. One muttered, family property dispute. The next morning, the local paper confirmed it. Community family faces property conflict. No names, but everyone knew. The wording painted me as a bitter old man guarding his fortune. That afternoon, a realtor's car idled near my gate. The woman inside pretended to check her phone until I walked toward her. Just reviewing listings, she murmured before driving off. The house felt smaller afterward. Every sound, the faucet drip, the hum of the fridge, seemed too loud. I tried reading, cleaning, sanding a piece of wood I'd meant to shape into a shelf, but nothing eased the static in my head. A week later, Mark struck again. This time through rumor. He told people I wasn't mentally sharp, that he worried about me living alone, hinting I might not be capable of handling my affairs. It was smart in a cruel way. Once a lie like that spreads denial, only makes it stick. At the market, the cashier I'd known for years leaned forward. You doing okay, Mr. Harlan? I almost laughed, but just nodded. I'm fine. Back home, I stood at the porch railing watching the water churn. Anger came in sharp flashes, but what lingered was grief. Something sacred being dismantled piece by piece, while I kept pretending not to see it. When the phone rang, I expected Mark. It was Claire. "You holding up depends on the hour. I've seen men like him," she said. "They rely on exhaustion. Wear you down until surrender feels like peace. I'm already tired." "Then rest smart," she said. "Not foolish." Her words settled heavy between us. "I'm drafting something," she added. "It's not aggressive, just precise. Come tomorrow." The next day, her assistant led me into a smaller room. Claire sat at the end of the table, a folder waiting in front of her. "This," she said, "is the formal response. Calm, factual, airtight. But there's another route. Legal and final." I opened the folder. The text blurred heavy with words like consequence and commitment. Claire watched me. "If you want to stop them, there's a way. But you need to want it for the right reason, not anger, not pride. Certainty." I traced the folder's edge. A car door slammed somewhere nearby, sharp enough to make me flinch. She didn't push. "Take it home," she said. "Read it when you're ready." The folder stayed on the table for 2 days before I opened it. The house felt stale from waiting. I told myself I was tired, distracted, but truthfully, I was afraid. The first pages were routine legal drafts, correspondence logs, the framework for ownership. Then I reached a section marked Financial Attachments. Loan statements under Mark's name and beside them joint applications using Emily's. Something in me went still. He'd borrowed money under her identity. Several times. Different banks, escalating amounts. The debts weren't theoretical. They were drowning him. The property transfer request wasn't about family. It was a lifeline. When I called Claire, she didn't sound surprised. "That explains the sudden pressure," she said. "He's not patient. People in debt rarely are." I asked what would happen if I went public. "If you expose this," she said, "he's finished. Professionally, socially done. But Emily goes down with him unless we handle it carefully." Her words hung between us, steady and cool, but I could feel the risk crawling under my skin. "So you're saying my choice is between protecting my daughter and saving myself?" Claire didn't sugarcoat it. "That's exactly what I'm saying." That night I sat at the kitchen table long after the dishes were done. Every small sound in the house pressed the same question: what kind of father was I now? For years I'd been the calm one, avoiding fights until I had no choice. That calm had become a cage. I poured a drink, watched the amber swirl, and told myself silence was still the higher road. But silence had teeth. It was eating everything: sleep, reputation, even the few friends who still called. The rumors started quietly. A neighbor's whisper, a pitying glance at the store, an old golf partner avoiding my hand. Then I heard why. Mark was telling people I was slipping, losing memory, growing erratic. "It's sad," he'd said. "The old man isn't himself anymore." A simple lie, but it fit neatly into my age. It spread fast. The hardware clerk offered me a discount just to help out. That stung more than the rumor itself. When I met Claire later that week, I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, hands, still eyes sharp. "If you let them win this way," she said, "they'll take more than your house. They'll take your name." I rubbed my temple. "You make it sound easy." "It isn't," she said. "But standing still won't stop a storm. They built it around you." I didn't respond. She gathered her papers and added, "You're not fighting your daughter, David. You're showing her where the line is, whether she wants to see it or not." The drive home felt endless. The Pacific shimmered beside the road, but I barely saw it. I thought of Emily as a child, her hand in mine, as we crossed the street, asking why the ocean never stopped moving. I'd told her the waves didn't rest because they belonged to no one. Now I wondered if she remembered. When I reached the house, the mailbox held another envelope, no return address. A printout about elderly financial abuse lay folded within. A paragraph was circled in red. Older individuals often fail to recognize declining capacity and may resist assistance. No signature, no need. I tore it in half and walked to the porch. The sea looked calm again. Too calm. Claire's voice echoed in my head, steady and logical fairness doesn't arrive on its own. I stayed until dusk. Part of me wanted to believe Emily didn't know about the loans. Another part knew denial had its limit. The clock ticked toward midnight. Sleep never came. My body ached with fatigue, but my mind replayed the same choice: father or man, love or pride. At dawn, I brewed coffee I didn't want and sat on the porch watching the waves push and pull as if arguing with themselves. Claire's warning came back clear as the tide. If you let them win, you'll lose yourself. The folder lay beside the cup, open to the forged signatures. The anger had cooled into something heavier. Resolve. Morning began with paperwork stacks of forms, deeds, verification slips. Claire had called earlier. File a property verification with the county, she said. No confrontation. Just leave a trail. Each signature felt like a small weight added to the right side of a scale. For once I had direction. Most documents were scanned, loan records, proof of Mark's debts, confirmation the house was still mine. Claire would archive them. Her quiet precision steadied my thoughts. The quiet around the house grew charged, like waiting for a sound that wouldn't come. A message arrived from an unknown number. You should let it go. It's not worth the trouble. I stared at it, unsure if it was a threat or advice, then deleted it. The words stayed. Claire told me to stay calm. Mark's kind relies on intimidation, she said. You've already taken the step he can't undo. Her tone was steady, but a warning threaded through it. I bought a new padlock. The clerk looked too long, but said nothing. I replaced the old lock, the click of the metal firm under my hand. It wasn't fear, it was readiness. At night I kept my phone face down on the table. The house had its own rhythm now, wood-settling traffic, fading waves pulsing below. Waiting became a habit. A low engine rumbled near the gate. Mark's sedan lingered, headlights, fixed motor humming, then eased back and vanished down the road. No message, just presence. Everything seemed calm, too calm. Peace often looks like safety until it cracks. The thought didn't frighten me. I'd spent years chasing calm, mistaking it for control. Now I saw it for what it was, a warning. 2 days later, they came. No call, no warning. Mark's sedan pulled into the drive. Emily sat beside him, rigid eyes fixed ahead. When I opened the door, Mark was already on the path, a folder tucked under his arm, a lawyer trailing close behind. Emily followed, small and tense, her hands clasped tight. David Mark began, his tone smooth, almost pleasant. Thought it'd be easier to talk face to face. He walked straight in, settling at the kitchen table as if it were his. The lawyer placed a stack of papers between us. Emily stayed silent, eyes on the table's edge like she was searching for an escape. Mark's words came smooth, rehearsed. This is about family, he said. Responsibility. The house means stability for Emily and me. It makes sense long-term for it to be under our management. You can still live here. Nothing changes day to day. His tone belonged to a boardroom, not a kitchen. I didn't interrupt. My pulse slowed, each beat deliberate, counting down something I already knew. He gestured toward the papers. It's just oversight. You've had a good run, David, but it's time to plan ahead. You wouldn't want confusion later. The lawyer gave a small cough like punctuation. Emily spoke softly. Dad, this isn't meant to hurt you. It's just practical. Her voice caught eyes fixed on the table. Mark leaned closer. We all know managing property at your age can get complicated. It's easy to forget things. It's not your fault it happens. There it was, the hook dressed as concern. My supposed decline made polite. I met his gaze then. The confidence in his face wasn't cruelty. It was certainty. He believed I'd surrender because he'd framed it as kindness. I lifted the first page, scanning the tight legal phrasing. Transfer. Consent. Acknowledgement. Words that would erase my name in one stroke. I appreciate your concern, I said, setting it down, but I'm not signing anything today. Mark's expression didn't shift, but something colder entered the room. This isn't about winning or losing, he said evenly. It's about avoiding conflict. I said nothing. Across the table, Emily's shallow breaths filled the pause. He stood chair scraping the floor. If you're refusing to cooperate, the law will have to decide. I don't want that for Emily's sake, but you're leaving me no choice. He turned toward her. Let's go. She rose, eyes wet but tearless. Dad, please think about it. It's not as bad as it looks. I nodded. Drive safe. The car's sound lingered after they left longer than their voices ever did. The house settled heavier somehow. I poured a glass of water and held it until it warmed in my hand. As dusk fell, I went to my study, opened the metal box, and gathered everything: bank statements, deeds, records of Mark's debts, and the loans in Emily's name. I scanned the files and sent them to Claire. All yours. Do what needs to be done. The message went through. I watched the screen fade to stillness. No hesitation, no sense of crossing a line. Whatever had cracked inside me earlier was gone, now replaced by something clean and quiet. A car door slammed somewhere down the street, and for a moment I thought they'd returned. Then came only the ocean's rhythm, steady and unbothered. I poured another drink, movement automatic. The house wasn't peaceful, it was waiting. Stillness stretched thin, ready to break. For years I'd mistaken calm for control. Tonight I knew better. There was no calm left to save, only the pull of what was already coming undone. The decision didn't arrive with drama. It came like sand shifting beneath water, inevitable once it starts. I stepped onto the porch, felt the night wind, and let the sound of the waves fill what space remained in me. The headline waited at the top of the paper like a verdict: local investor under investigation for loan fraud. Mark Reed named in allegations. I read it twice. No anger, no satisfaction, just a quiet that felt like balance returning. I folded the paper, made coffee. The cup felt lighter than it should. For months I'd lived in fog, waiting for equilibrium. Now it had tilted on its own. The phone rang. Emily's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. Dad, did you do this? Her voice was tight, brittle. The clock ticked behind me. They're saying you leaked his records, she went on. Mark's being called into hearings. Reporters are everywhere. I let her words run their course. When she stopped, I said quietly, the truth finds its own way out. That's not an answer, she snapped. It's the only one I've got. She hung up. The quiet afterward wasn't empty. It was relief, like air after holding it too long. Later at the grocery store, the cashier glanced but said nothing. A neighbor near the lot nodded toward me. Hell of a thing in the paper. Guess karma's got a timetable. I managed a small smile, unsure if it was kindness or mockery. By noon, the phone buzzed again, texts, missed calls, old names resurfacing. Good for you, David. Finally stood up to him. About time. I answered none of them. Words like that never last. That evening I read the news online. Photos of Mark leaving his office, head down, surrounded by microphones. The article listed falsified collateral loans in Emily's name. Her mention was softened by sympathy. The comments were split, half called him a crook, half pitied him. A few blamed me. I closed the page. Stepping outside, I felt the wind shift westward. The sea was calm, heavy with the stillness after thunder. For the first time in months, I felt calm too, not from winning, but from truth moving on its own. That night, while sorting old mail, the phone rang again. Jason, one of Mark's old colleagues. "David," he said, tone too cheerful, just checking in. "People say you went after him." "True, I didn't have to," I said. "He built his own trap." A pause, then a laugh that didn't reach him. "Some folks think you're bitter. People need a story that fits their comfort." He muttered a polite goodbye. By morning, the town had adjusted to the scandal. At the cafe, 2 regulars whispered my name. The barista who'd once avoided me offered a refill on the house. Strange how fast pity turns to respect. I walked home with the folded paper under my arm. The road felt shorter. The house quiet, steady. I set the paper beside the stack Claire had helped me organize. Everything finally had its shape. I didn't call her, she'd already know. Instead, I made lunch and watched gulls drift above the water. By afternoon, Mark's statement appeared online. He denied everything, calling the accusations misunderstandings caused by a vengeful relative. That line made me smile, thin and brief. Messages kept coming, some kind, some condescending. One read, "I always knew you weren't crazy." I deleted it. The truth didn't need defenders. It had its own rhythm, now unfolding where it must. At dusk, I sat on the porch with tea, watching the horizon fade. The weight on my chest had lifted. The fear of being misunderstood had gone with it. The quiet wasn't hollow anymore, it was clean. I leaned back, letting the hum of the sea fill the spaces words used to occupy. For once, I owed no one an explanation. I thought that was the end of it. But then came the soft knock at the door. When I opened it, Emily stood there. She lingered at the doorway before stepping in. The fading light traced her face, showing the exhaustion of someone done defending the indefensible. She carried a folded newspaper in one hand and the weight of everything unspoken in the other. I didn't ask her to sit, but she did same chair she'd used years ago when she told me she'd met Mark. The distance between that day and this one felt both endless and razor thin. She placed the paper beside my cold tea. "Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "No." Her shoulders sagged, not with relief, but confusion. "Then why does it feel like you do?" I glanced at the headline between us. Mark's face blurred under the word investigation. "Because I don't hate you," I said. "But I can't trust you either." She looked down. For a while, neither of us spoke. "I didn't know about the loans," she said quietly. "He told me it was business. He said you wanted control. Do you believe him? I don't know what to believe." Her voice wasn't lying, it was just lost. I'd heard that sound before in people realizing too late what they'd enabled. "Belief doesn't change the facts," I said. "You wanted to see him as good. I understand that." Tears welled, but she didn't cry. "I wanted to see both of you as good. But now you're just strangers fighting over something that doesn't matter." "It matters," I said. "It's all that proves I didn't disappear." The word surprised even me. She froze, then stood. "He's talking about suing you. Says you leaked information to ruin him. He can tell himself whatever helps him sleep. He won't stop Dad? You know that." "I do." The clock ticked softly somewhere in the house. She rubbed her hands together, smaller than I remembered. "I just don't want you to end up alone because of this." "I've been alone for years," I said. "I just hadn't noticed." Her chin trembled. "If I'd asked for help earlier..." Would you have done all this? I would have done worse. A faint, broken smile crossed her face. She left without closing the door fully. The wind carried a scent of salt and rain. I turned back to the table. The newspaper lay smudged with her fingerprints. I folded it again and set it aside. Later, I found another envelope in the mailbox, no return address, just my name in careful handwriting. Inside was a letter from Mark's attorney cease and desist for defamation and interference of professional reputation. I read it once, placed it beside the paper. The words were hollow, the echo of a man trying to keep control after the story had already escaped him. Dinner went untouched. I walked through the house, not checking anything, just moving. Passing Emily's old room, I noticed the box she'd left years ago, drawings, photos, small proofs of who she'd been. I didn't open it. In the study, I took a blank sheet of paper. Writing by hand felt strange after months of forms and signatures. The pen dragged slower than I expected. No names, no address, just a few lines to remind myself why I was still standing. Silence once meant dignity, I wrote. Now it means surrender. I've surrendered enough. I folded the note and slid it into the top drawer. Not a declaration, just a mark in time. A line between before and after. The anger was gone, the hurt too. What remained was a steady, cold clarity. Claire's voice echoed in memory. You have to decide what kind of man you'll be when this ends. The clock ticked once, sharp and final. I picked up the phone. I'm ready, I told her. Her pause was brief, almost expected. All right, David, she said. Then let's finish this properly. When the line went quiet, I stayed there a moment longer, letting my own breath fill the space where fear used to live. The meeting was set for Tuesday. Claire told me to arrive early, so I did. The building was glass and concrete, cold, balanced, impersonal, the kind of place where truth and civility stare each other down. Mark was already there, seated across the table, his lawyer beside him, pen, tapping a steady beat. Claire stood by the window, arms crossed. The faint scent of coffee lingered, metallic and stale. David, Mark said, voice stretched thin. Glad you decided to face this properly. I nodded. That makes two of us. The lawyers exchanged clipped greetings. Then the air went still. Mark leaned forward. You've humiliated my wife, destroyed my name, dragged us through the mud. For what revenge, I didn't answer. My hands stayed folded. He pushed on. You think this makes you noble? You're not protecting Emily, you're punishing her. You've done it since the day she stopped needing you. Claire opened her folder, calm and precise. Mr. Reed, she said, sliding a stack of papers across the table, you should see these. The scrape of paper on wood cut through his words. He glanced down. Loan applications, financial records, forged signatures, all under his name and Emily's. These are verified by both banks and the state registry, Claire said evenly. Each confirms funds obtained with falsified documents. One, she tapped the page, bears David Harlan's forged signature as guarantor. Color drained from his face. You went digging through my life, I met his eyes. No. I stopped pretending not to see. He gave a brittle laugh. You think anyone will believe you over me? You're a bitter old man with paperwork. Claire's tone didn't waver. The paperwork's doing fine. He slammed a hand on the table. You're doing this to punish me and her. Admit it. My voice stayed level. I'm doing it because someone has to, and you made sure it wouldn't be her. He froze, then sneered. You've always hated me. That's not true, I said. I just recognized you sooner than she did. His lawyer shifted, but Mark waved him off. You're pathetic, he said. You call this justice. You're tearing your daughter's life apart just to feel relevant. For a second, the words hit their mark. He'd always known where to aim. but the part of me that used to flinch was gone. I let the quiet stretch. Claire gathered the documents, stacked them neatly. "We'll let the authorities take it from here," she said. "There's nothing more to discuss." Mark stood abruptly, laughing without humor. "You think she'll forgive you for this?" "I don't need her forgiveness," I said. "I just need the truth to stand." He spat the words, "You're not fit to be her father." I paused at the door. Maybe not. But I'm the only one here acting like one. No one spoke after that. Even the room seemed to hold its breath. In the hallway, city noise filtered through glass traffic footsteps, a ringing phone. Ordinary sounds indifferent. I kept walking. In the elevator, my reflection stared back, neither triumphant nor relieved, just emptied out lighter by something that had finally fallen away. Downstairs, rain glazed the street. I stood under the awning watching strangers pass with umbrellas. No one knew me. The anonymity felt sacred. Claire joined me, papers under her arm. She handed me a receipt. "It's done." "Good. You okay? I will be." She gave a small nod. "You did what needed doing." We parted at the corner. She turned back toward the office. I crossed the slick street to my car. The next morning I'd learn how far that crack would spread. The headline came sooner than I expected. "Reed family feud escalates as countersuit filed." My name appeared in the second paragraph, surrounded by accusations, motives, speculation. Someone had even dug up old photos of me and Emily, quoting an interview from years ago. They called me a proud but stubborn man. It read like a compliment wrapped around a warning. By noon, the story had spread. Strangers argued about us online. One post said I was selfish. Another said I was protecting what was his. The noise blurred together into something that no longer felt human, just static with opinions attached. Claire called and told me not to engage. "Stay quiet," she said. "Let the process work." "I've been quiet most of my life," I said. "I know," she replied. But this time silence is strategy. I wanted to trust that. So I went about the day, as usual, groceries, post office, hardware store. Routine reminded me I still existed beyond the headlines. People looked longer than before, faces shifting between pity and judgment. One man muttered, "Poor guy," as I passed. Another just stared like studying a cautionary tale. That evening, the local news aired Mark's statement. He sat before a bookshelf, composed and practiced. "This has never been about money," he said. "It's about a father's refusal to let go. I only hope Emily and I can move forward without bitterness." He looked straight into the camera, every word rehearsed. Maybe he even believed it, men like him usually did. I turned off the TV. The house felt smaller. Emily didn't call the next day. Claire stopped by with a folder and a tired expression. "He filed a defamation counterclaim," she said. "It won't hold, but we'll have to respond." "Let him," I said. She studied me, maybe expecting anger. "You're handling this better than I thought." "I'm not handling it," I said. "I'm just watching it happen." That earned a faint smile. She left the folder on the table and went back to her car. Messages kept coming, old co-workers, distant acquaintances, all with the same script. "Hang in there, David. We're praying for you. None from Emily." The quiet between us had grown too thick to reach across. One night I found an anonymous letter slipped under the door. The handwriting was careful but uneven. "He's not going to win this time. People are talking." I couldn't tell if it was comfort or warning. Either way, it didn't matter. Truth was already moving on its own. By week's end, the rumors shifted. Someone from Mark's firm had spoken to investigators, a former employee, claiming he'd been pressured to falsify numbers. The report didn't name me, but everyone knew. When I got home, Claire called. "One of Mark's associates gave a statement," she said. "It'll go public soon. They're uncovering everything. I exhaled. Then it's not about me anymore. No, she said. It's not. After we hung up, I sat on the porch watching the town lights shimmer over the water. The ocean moved in its rhythm, steady, detached. I thought of Emily, unsure if she was angry or just tired. Either way, truth would find her eventually. It always does. Later, I brewed tea and turned on the radio. A voice on a late-night show talked about resilience, not strength, but endurance, about surviving by knowing what to let go. Claire arrived that afternoon, wind-blown sand dusting her jacket. She didn't sit, just placed a stack of papers on the table. It's official, she said. They've filed charges. The words settled between us. I didn't ask for details. I'd stopped following the news. Whatever it said was only catching up to what had already happened. He's been suspended, she added. The board removed him this morning. It'll get worse before it gets quiet again. I nodded. No triumph, no relief. Just release. Good, I said. She studied me briefly. You don't look relieved. Maybe that's the wrong word, I said. Relief still expects things to get better. She understood. We didn't speak much after that. She stacked the papers neatly, the faint rustle filling the pause, then left them for me to sign. When she was gone, I stepped out. The tide was low, sand dark and heavy. I walked without direction, each step sinking slightly. The ocean stretched wide and indifferent, and I didn't feel smaller for facing it. The anger that had carried me this far was gone, replaced by something quieter, not forgiveness, not peace, just clarity. I'd spent years mistaking restraint for dignity, silence for strength. Maybe it wasn't silence that mattered, but knowing when to speak and living with what follows. By the time I returned, Claire's folder waited on the table, her handwriting clean on the first page. I opened it and read the document transferring the house, the last piece of my old life, to a foundation for young architects. At the bottom was the clause I'd written myself. No member of my family shall hold any claim or benefit from this property now or in the future. I signed my name. The pen moved steady, no hesitation left. For years, that house had been my anchor proof I'd survived. But anchors hold you still, and I was tired of staying put. I sealed the envelope, left it by the door for pickup. The act felt final, but light. Some endings roar, others exhale. This one breathed. The house hummed quietly, the creak of wood, the wind brushing the shutters. The silence no longer pressed. It stayed beside me, calm and familiar. A thought surfaced without effort. I had nothing left to defend. Maybe that was the point. The next morning I walked the beach. A group of students were sketching near the rocks, architecture majors by the tools in their hands. One asked, "Do you know who owns the house up the hill?" "I did," I said. "Not anymore." They nodded, not understanding, and went back to their lines. I kept walking until sand turned to pavement, and the sounds of town crept back in. When I returned, the documents were gone. Courier collected as planned. A clean square on the table marked their absence. It looked right, like a healed scar, visible, but no longer sore. I spent the afternoon cleaning hinges, shelves, small repairs I'd ignored. Not from guilt, but to leave the place whole. Evening arrived quietly. I stood by the porch, watching the horizon fade. The smell of salt and metal drifted from the harbor. My chest felt light, each breath my own. Claire would handle what came next, the filings, the press, the noise. I wasn't part of that noise anymore. I reached for the porch light, then let the dark settle. The ocean murmured, its rhythm steady, patient. The house behind me wasn't mine now, but for this moment it still held my shadow. That was enough. I thought of calling Emily, then let the idea pass. Some truths belong to silence. On the day I gave away what once defined me, I caught myself smiling, quiet, unplanned. The stillness didn't feel empty. It felt earned. And when I turned to leave, the world felt wide again. That's when I saw her by the parking lot, arms crossed, eyes unsure, as if she'd been waiting all day to step forward. Emily. She stood near the lot, motionless in the fading light. When I approached, she didn't move. Her eyes were red-tired more than angry. "Is it true?" she asked. "You gave the house away? Nothing for me?" "It's true." Her gaze flicked toward the sea. "Why would you do that? Wasn't it supposed to be ours someday?" "It was mine to keep," I said, "and mine to let go." Her shoulders trembled. "You didn't have to punish me for what he did. This isn't punishment," I said. "It's cleanup. Some things can't stay mixed." Her lips parted as if she might argue, but no words came. She looked smaller than I remembered, though. Maybe it wasn't her body that had changed, just the illusion that she still needed me. The wind came in from the coast, carrying the smell of salt and rain. She wiped her face with her sleeve, staring down at the gravel. "I thought you'd forgive me," she whispered. "I did," I said. "I just stopped trying to forget." She covered her mouth, and for a second I thought she might collapse, but she stayed standing, caught between pride and regret, realizing too late both could break a person the same way. The silence stretched. Gulls passed overhead, cars hummed on the highway. Her tears fell quietly, but I didn't move. I'd done enough saving. Then, softly, he's gone. They charged him fraud, forgery, everything. "I know," I said. "Everyone's turned on him, even his parents. They say he used me." I met her eyes, saw not a victim, not a child, but a woman standing in the wreckage of her own belief. "Now you understand what it costs to trust the wrong person for too long." Her face twisted. "Bah." The word cracked thin and small. I hadn't heard it like that in years. "I don't hate you," I said. "But I can't live in that story anymore, the one where I'm always waiting for you to come back." She nodded, tears blurring her features. "I just wanted things to go back." "They don't," I said. "They move forward. That's both mercy and punishment." She hesitated, then whispered, "You could still change your mind." "I already did. That's why we're here." Her last words barely carried. "I don't know how to fix this." "You don't," I said. "You live with it." She nodded once, whether in defeat or relief I couldn't tell, and walked to her car. The door shut, softly, final. When the taillights vanished, I turned toward the beach. The wind had picked up leaves, scattering across the path. Somewhere in town, Mark's name was being stripped from office doors, his accounts frozen, his image erased by the same people who'd once cheered him. Justice never comes clean. It arrives late, cold, and without ceremony. No victory. No applause. Just truth standing when everything else falls quiet. I walked back to the porch. The house looked unchanged, though I knew better. Places keep ghosts long after you've let them go. A month later, I packed what little I had. The house wasn't mine, but I left it clean without traces. No forwarding address, just keys on the counter beside a note. Everything's settled now. The apartment felt smaller than when I'd signed the lease. Maybe it was quiet. I made coffee and sat at the small table. A photo lay beside the cup, Emily at 7 ice cream on her cheek knees, scraped grin crooked. That summer she'd helped me fix the fence hammer, too heavy hair full of sawdust. The frame was cracked at one corner. I didn't fix it. I just set it back in the drawer, not hidden, just away. On my phone, a message from Claire. "The transfer's gone through. The house is under the foundation now. You did good, David. I'm proud of you." I read it twice, then turned the screen over. Words like proud used to mean something. Now they sounded like punctuation at the end of a sentence already finished. I stepped onto the balcony mug, warm in my hand. The city stretched close, and ordinary windows filled with strangers beginning their day hills faint in the distance, no ocean in sight. Maybe that was better. For months I'd imagined endings as explosions loud and certain. But they come like this instead, a drawer closing a message read and left unanswered, a photo tucked away. I unpacked what little I'd kept, books, clothes, a chipped mug from college. The apartment looked bare, but not lonely. There's freedom in starting with almost nothing. It leaves your hands open. At noon, I ate soup from the pot. Sunlight caught the dust, drifting in slow circles, until it disappeared again. Another message came from Claire. "They're naming the scholarship after you. Hope that's okay." I didn't reply. Names fade too. Later I walked through the city. Kids on bikes, a man sweeping his storefront, tourists arguing over directions. It felt alive in a way the coast never had, messy, unfiltered human. I passed the bookstore I used to visit, the florist, still too sweet, the cracked sidewalk where Emily once tripped running to meet me. The memory rose and fell without ache, just a moment from another life. I used to think dignity meant holding on. Maybe it's the opposite, letting go without bitterness, standing still and saying, "This is enough." The apartment was almost empty, but it didn't feel lacking. Nothing was missing. Nothing was owed. As twilight came, the buildings turned soft and blue. I opened the balcony door. No ocean, only the faint thrum of traffic threading through the streets. I smiled barely. It felt honest. The sky cleared wide and quiet.